good, hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to talk about all of my favorite audiobooks, and I'm finally going to be recommending some of my favorites. You guys may or may not know, I I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. They are such quick and easy ways for me to consume novels sometimes, and today we're going to be talking general advice, some of my favorite genres, my least favorite genres, and I'm going to be recommending my favorites to you. I have a Goodreads shelf with 83 audiobooks on it, so I have listened to my fair share of audiobooks in the last couple of years, and I genuinely love my audiobooks so much. My favorite way to consume audiobooks is either through Scribd or Libby. I personally don't love Audible just because I don't think the service is kind of worth what you're paying for. Although they do have that swap feature where you can like swap the book that you don't like or you're not really interested in for another book because you are just paying $14.99 for the credit. With Scribd, you pay $8.99 and you get as many available titles as you want. And the only gripe that I would have with it is the available now feature, and essentially that'll block out some of the books, a good chunk of books actually, for a couple of weeks. So like right now there's like a blockage until the 26th. Today is the 16th, so it's blocked out for 10-11 days, and so that gets a little bit frustrating, but it's something that I totally work around, and honestly it's okay by me because I am only paying $9 for an unlimited library. But speaking of libraries, I also really love Libby for this. Libby is the app that is connected to your local library, and you can have, I believe it's up to 5 library cards logged onto it. You can pick books from 5 different libraries, and honestly it's awesome. The only issue with that comes the fact that there are some really long waiting lists on some really popular books, which is why I like Scribd to come show some of those other options when they are available. So some of these general recommendations are going to be based on my personal experiences. This could be completely different for you. You could totally not even like audiobooks, and this video would be pointless for you. But if you like audiobooks and you trust my opinion when it comes to stuff like this, here are some of my general tips. So one genre I think that I would be a lot more hesitant to reading just over audio is fantasy, but especially adult fantasy. Like if I were to read like The Bone Season, for example, I would not be able to follow along with it just over audio. I would highly recommend, if you are going to listen to a fantasy book, have the physical book in front of you, or have like an ebook or something so that you are following along with those pages, because these fantasy worlds can get really dense sometimes and listening to it doesn't help. I've had a couple of reading experiences honestly tainted by the fact that I tried to read a fantasy book over audio, and funny enough, Truthwitch, which is on my TBR for the month of June, was an audiobook that I consumed, and I don't remember so much of it because of that. However, some of the best genres that I have read include contemporary, historical fiction, mystery thrillers, books in verse, and memoirs. Generally, I really enjoy rereading books over audio because I already kind of know the story, and so when I continue with the Red Queen trilogy, it's not a trilogy, it's a series, but once I continue with the Red Queen books, I'm going to listen to Red Queen over audio because I already know the story, and I'm just kind of re-listening so that I can kind of pick up on any details that I might have forgotten that would help continuing the series. But that is typically the only time you'll see me read a fantasy book over audio, is when I've already read it and I already know the story. So now we are going to get to the 9, kind of 10 recommendations that I have. The first recommendation is actually the Illuminae series. I'm not gonna pull it because it's at the bottom of that stack, but you guys can see it. The Illuminae trilogy is one of my favorite series, like, of all time, but when I picked it up over audio and I was flipping along with the pages, so it is in a mixed media format, and having it's just such a cool performance. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, so Illuminae is basically like this space opera. It is one of the coolest series I think I have ever read. We have an incredible AI system called Aiden who plays such a huge role in these novels. I would almost argue that the Illuminae series could be kind of like a graphic novel. It's definitely not, but with the mixed media, it almost makes it feel like it, and it's super easy to fly through despite how chunky that they look. I would highly recommend listening to this and following along with it physically so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. It really does feel like you are so immersed in the Illuminae world because of how the audiobook is produced. The next series that I have is the Wayward series by Shannon McGuire. Is that her name? I'm pretty sure that's her name. That should be, right? Anyway, these are super quick novellas to go through. I've listened to all of them on audio, and honestly, because they're only like, what, 4 hours long, on 2x speed, I finished them in 2 hours. They're super easy to consume, and these stories are highly addicting, though I found that like as time goes on, I don't enjoy them as much as I used to, but I still have a great appreciation for this series and would highly recommend listening to them on audio. The next is one that kind of goes against my general advice in the beginning, and that's the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The reason I say the Lord of the Rings out of any real like fantasy series that I've read before is because the way these audiobooks are produced is just so cool. You get all of these sound effects. It's almost as if you're watching the movie, but you're not. And I don't know if this is legal, but the audiobooks are on YouTube and you can look them up, and honestly they were great. It made reading the Lord of the Rings a lot easier for the class that I took, and for days when you are reading literally chapters upon chapters upon chapters, it becomes so much easier to throw on the audiobook so that I don't actually skip things and I am consuming the entire thing. However, I would totally reread this over audio, but honestly I would much rather watch the movies. The next two are some contemporary novels, the first one being Sadie. This is done in kind of like an interview format. It has such a cool aspect to it, and it is a mystery, and honestly I have had so much fun reading this, and I kind of still think about how creepy it felt to this day. The book is very chilling, and I honestly still think about it all the time. The next book is Daisy Jones and the Six. This wouldn't be an audiobook recommendation if I didn't mention at least one of the two Evelyn Hugo, whoa, not Evelyn Hugo, that's not her name. Taylor Jenkins Reid, oh my gosh. This wouldn't be an audiobook recommendations if I didn't mention one of the two Taylor Jenkins Reid books that I read and absolutely loved. Daisy Jones just has, I don't know, such a good place in my heart because of how much I enjoy this audiobook, and because it is also in interview style. I think interview style books in general work really well with an audiobook format. But this is just so much fun, and this story is very different from Evelyn Hugo, but I'm still debating on which one would be my favorite of the two that I read, because like the rest of her books are on my TBR, but that's not what we're talking about right now. Totally would listen to Daisy Jones and the Six again over audio, and honestly it might be due for a reread. Up next is Four Dead Queens by Ashton Schulte. This book, oh my gosh, I remember reading alongside this book and I was having such a good time. Like I said, with Sadie, murder mysteries are really cool, and I loved seeing how everything was unfolding. This was one of those books where like I would read partially, and then like if I don't have the physical book on me, I would listen to it on my drives, and it's just a book that like I could keep up with so easily because it was so fast paced, but also because you didn't really need to know a ton to know where the story was going. I had so much fun with Four Dead Queens, and like other mystery novels, like it's just immaculate. Up next is a book that I didn't think I would recommend over audio, but I definitely do, and that's 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is I think one of the only Stephen King, I think it is the only Stephen King book that I've read, and like that's a travesty on its own. But this book was just so cool. I had borrowed it from one of my friends, and I was just like flying through it, and I was so into how Stephen King writes, and this was just me reading it physically, and then she had asked for the book back, and so I was like, okay fine, like I'll listen to it via audiobook from where I stopped, and oh my gosh, was that a whole other experience itself. I was not anticipating enjoying this reading experience as much as I did, and I think it's because Stephen King is just such a great writer. Like he just knows what he's doing, and so this was one of my favorites of the year that I did read it. I think this was it 2 years ago now? It has to have been 2 years now. But loved this, and I loved it over audio. However, it is really long, so just be aware. The next is the Cassidy Blake series by Victoria Schwab. This is a middle grade starting with City of Ghosts, and this Oh my gosh, am I not in focus? I really hope I was in focus. This too is so much fun. I think because it is a middle grade, it's a lot easier to consume in general, but especially over audio. It's one of those book series that is just, it's really fast paced for what it's worth, and Cassidy is a very endearing character, and the entire story, the way Victoria Schwab writes it, it's so good and it's so easy to consume as it is, but listening to it over audio gives all of these characters so much more personality, and I think that's one of my favorite parts about this one specifically. I listened to both book 1 and book 2 over audio, and I have plans to read the 3rd book over audio as well. And the final recommendation is any book narrated by Elizabeth Acevedo or written by Elizabeth Acevedo. She is the author of Clap When You Land, With the Fire on High, and The Poet X, and I still have to read The Poet X and With a Fire on High, but after I read Clap With You Land, I was blown away, not only by her writing style but by her performance. I can't remember right now which book that I had read, or no, was it Pride? I think it was Pride by E.B. Zavoy that I had listened to, and she was the audiobook narrator, and oh my gosh, was it so good. I just think Elizabeth Acevedo just has such an incredible voice, like in general, like she has a very smooth voice, and she has that little bit of Latin accent to her because she is, I believe it's called Afro-Latina. I will make sure that I correct myself on the screen. I don't want to say something wrong, but I believe she is Afro-Latina from the Dominican Republic, and I love her. I've listened and watched some of her slam poetry, and she is just such a powerful woman who like literally deserves to be on best-selling lists left and right. I love Elizabeth Acevedo with my entire heart, and her audiobooks are amazing. Like hands down, you need to read them. So those are all of my recommendations. I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you would like to see more audiobook recommendations or more recommendations in general, let me know in the comments down below as to what you would like to see next. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Follow all of my socials, and until then, I will talk to you on Instagram.